And now it's time for questions. And by the way, members of the audience, if you haven't been able to put any questions through your app, we've set up some speakers and we can, some microphones rather, and we can take questions later on. But I'd like to start a question that someone gave to me earlier. And of those two practitioners, I'm going to change it a bit for Daniel, who I'm going to ask to answer first. But to what extent will globalization impact on the way your practices operate over the next 5 years? And how significant an impact is it compared, let's say, with other challenges that we have, like regulatory changes and technology and competition? But I want to change it just slightly for Daniel while the others are thinking about it. And that is really now how people are financing SMEs. Do you find through your experience that's changed?
Okay. All right. So yeah, yes, the financing of SMEs, what we found in the industry is that there's a lot of reliance on digital electronic information. So payment information, once it's available, the lender is able to see the capacity of the SME. And, so it behooves the SMP in providing advisory services to make sure that their client, if they're in a developing market, of course, if it's a developed market, that's already, given. In a developing market, that their client migrates to electronic forms of payment, because access to credit will definitely, be a hindrance without the visibility into the volumes that pass through the business.
Thank you. And going back to my specific question now, Inga, where do you see the world in 5 years' time? In terms of your practice and how you're helping?
We, as an auditor, we cannot make a certification on the future, but we can only see what about the assumptions are. So in 5 years' time, we will still have much more the impact of the technology in our offices, in our SMPs, and the globalization, and this will impact the globalization too. It is very important to have the experience in the technology and not to walk ahead, and to have with the staff of the SMPs, to invest with the staff of the SMPs in the technology in that market, and to help our SMEs to go internationally, because the world will be one small thing, I think.
I think that came out. The world is getting much, much smaller, and we need to step up to the mark. And Jamil, how do you find this?
Well, I think we've been through a very difficult 4 years, and you're talking about Tunisia, I guess. So with all these unrest, and so on. But now we are really, looking very positively at the future, and I think everybody is waiting for Tunisia to be, very clear about the political system. Now we know that Democrats are there and so on, and as a matter of fact, the stock exchange, which is very good, indication, rose since 26th of October, where we elected the new parliament, by 1.5% every day. So that's like this now,
Fantastic.
Fantastic, we've never seen that. So I guess with the election of a new president, and from January next year, the foreign direct investment will come, and therefore bring in, some, how to say, possibility of investment. Now, to get back to your first question about the financing. The financing really is not a very big problem. If we take our country, we had $100 million from the World Bank directly for the S&P, 100 million euro from the Banque Européenne, the Investment European Bank. The problem is that we change our mode of economy, and we have to make a renewal, and because the competition is really stuck. So we have to open the competition. We have to stop these privileges, political privileges, and so on.
But how do you see your actual practice changing?
Sorry?
How do you see your actual practice, where you're working change?
My practice.
Yes.
We'll have it more, since now maybe 2 weeks, not even. We have a few new clients, but the last 4 years, because of this uncertainty and all these arrests, this has been really stuck, So, but I'm very, very positive and look, for a good outlook as from
great.
next year.
That's great. Kamlesh, how do you find things?
Well, if I crystal gaze and look at the future 5 to 10 years down the line, I would see a world where the geographies, the boundaries, the political boundaries would break. Businesses, no matter how small they are, would go global. And the SMPs also will go global. When I say global, what I am crystal gazing again is that the services which are being rendered today within the geographies, the barriers will break. The SMPs will render services across the world. Through technology, you'll be able to reach across the world. So it's no matter whether you sit in Mumbai or you sit in, say, Belgium or you sit in Tunisia, you'll be able to render service in the US, UK, or wherever. So that's what I am trying to imagine, that even as a practice, small and medium enterprise, we will be able to globalize our services and render services outside.
Yes. And I'm sure as SMPs, the thing we need to do is to step up to the mark. As more and more clients do become international, we've got to be ready for that as the world gets smaller. I've got a question here from a Giancarlo in Italy. So how might one develop or gain access to the requisite international resources, for example, by participating in international networks, which I think you touched on, of accountancy practices, or building more direct close relationships with practices in other countries, and I think also how do we deal more with finances direct? So who would like to come in with that first?
Yeah, I think we cannot go international without a network. So this is why in my speech I said the 26 Forum of Firm. Forum of Firm is the firm, who are member of IFAC, and they are mid-tier, so and they have quality reviews and so on. So those networks are a must for an SMP to go abroad, because I'm saying international, because they need correspondents and members and so on, and all over the world in order to help those SMEs who want to invest abroad.
Yeah.
So this is what I think.
And Daniel, how do we interact with you?
Yeah, so my view is, and I think the accounting bodies are a natural home for networking, but because of the silos, they are not able to go across the border. But as we said, technology is erasing borders, is making borders irrelevant, really, and therefore also the accounting bodies need to interrelate in such a way that the borders are not that visible. And like I said, the reason I have 3 accounting designations was because I lived in those parts of the world, and the U.S. GAAP will not relate to Nigeria, and Canadian GAAP doesn't have anything to do with the U.S. largely, and therefore you have to, get those certifications and sit down writing exams for years in order to be able to practice. But if you have a lot of collaboration and interconnection, you won't need to do that, and you can just, go across the border just like technology, and your customers are going across the borders.
Absolutely. Inga.
It's good
Oh,
to. I'm
so
sorry.
Inga first, sorry.
Okay, it's good to work in a network or an alliance when you have the same type of SMPs, when you have the same type of practices, and and you go often to the international seminars, you meet a lot of people and you know their quality and you know their work. And it's very important when you help a client working with another SMP that those SMPs have the same or give the same quality as what you're giving in your hometown.
Thank you. And Kamlesh, you wanted to come in?
I would personally believe that instead of setting up one-to-one relationship, as mentioned by the predecessor, it's extremely important that the SMP joins the network for 2 reasons. One, there's an outbound investment of his client outside, and there's an inbound investment of other clients coming into his country. So it's extremely important if you join a network, A, as Inga rightly mentioned, the quality levels are known because you have benchmarking of quality. And number 2, the SME who's coming into your country would have faith in the SMP which is serving him, which would refer to the other SMP in the other side of the world. So it's extremely important that SMP must join the networks, and as you rightly said, 5 to 10 years down the line, there's going to be a huge amount of businesses across borders.
Yeah, and I think you're right. In my own practice in the UK, network is absolutely key. And I must say, just taking advantage of being at the World Congress as well and meeting people from similar practices around the world makes a huge difference. As I say, I've got a couple of other questions here, but is there anyone from the audience who would like to ask any questions? If you do, please, we can't quite see you properly, but if there is, please feel free to go up to the microphone. I can't actually see if there is anyone who wants to ask a question. But if you do, please feel free to. I have another question here from someone.
Mark,
Oh, there is
question.
someone?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, please. There's a microphone, if you don't mind coming to the microphone. Oh, they're coming, great. So,
You can put it in the app, you know.
oh, okay. If it's in a different language, if you don't mind putting it in the app, or if someone can translate for
yeah,
you, that'd be great.
App, yeah.
But what I'll do is I'll continue on until we can get that particular question. So this one's from Yong in Malaysia. Is there a risk that others will sneak a lead on the accounting practices in the market for advisory SMEs on internationalization? In other words, is this the home of the accountant, or do we need to be careful of competition from elsewhere?
Well, I'll take that. As much as accounting is regulated, the advisory services is not. It's an open field. You have many players in there, and basically the SME is going to ask from someone who they're most trusted in. That's it. Advisory services has a lot to do with trust and a lot of trust, especially on the past record. So whoever can show the past record in that area where the SME is looking for, the SME will most likely lean on them, regardless of whether you're an accountant or not. So the accountant has to show value in that field, and it's not a natural reserve for you. That's my view.
And I think it's something that we need to make our reserve as accountants, because we're perfectly placed to help businesses. Kamlesh, would you like to comment on this, how it is in India?
I personally feel competition is part of life, and one should not be afraid of competition. The only way to challenge competition, as I mentioned in my presentation, is to give quality. So the moment you give quality, a client is going to come back to you no matter what. And therefore, I think the best way to beat competition is to give quality service.
Yes. And Inga?
I think that an accountant has an advantage because he's really knows the SME client very well, and he's really the first line business advisor. So as my experience is that the SME clients will go first to their accountant, and when their accountant cannot help them, then they go to other business advisors.
It's true. And Jamil, do you find the same?
Yeah, I think really that the accountant cannot survive only by accountancy and attest work, because all the software and they're all available, and he must go to the advice. He must go to the technology. He must go to even marketing, and have what you've seen yesterday, CGMA and AICPA. That's the future. That's the future. So the qualification of a CPA only will not, be very valid. My son is in Montreal, is CPA, and I'm pushing him to ASA, to have another, qualification in order to be polyvalent and try to help his client going international. And the languages are very important. You cannot go abroad without English. Don't, forget it, So the guy has to speak English, has to have other possibility, and has to really be the closest advisor or trusted advisor to his client.
Well, that brings me on to another point. What resources do you think we should have as SMPs to help our clients? We talked about networks, And I think, Kamlesh, you talked on technology. Do you want to just speak a bit further about that? And I'd like to ask the others what they think as well.
I think the technology is a very powerful medium for communication, number one. Number two, research. And number three, delivery of service. Extremely important that we harness the advantages of technology for rendering service. So very important that SMPs rather, develop skill sets within their own organizations to harness different kinds of technology. And the technology is progressing at such fast pace. You have now mobile technology, you have cloud computing, and therefore, if you harness those technologies, I am sure one can be a winner and one can be ahead of race in terms of delivering service.
And would anyone else like to come in on this? Daniel?
I think you can overemphasize the contribution of the human resource. There's a lot of competition on the talent. So how does an SMP stand out? Human resources has to be a forethought, not an afterthought. The big four already have it going, but you as an SMP, I believe, has a unique advantage. You can create career paths. You can, create career paths to partnership that, you don't have to follow the old established ways of doing it and go the SME ways of getting partners on board. They call them partners. In your mind, you're thinking they have to have 30 years accounting experience. No. They don't. So you have to be able to position yourself for this and be attractive. I remember it was my third year in the university that the university brought in an accountant in practice to talk to us. And quite frankly, from that moment, I decided I wasn't going to go into practice because he was everything I did not want to be. But what I did was to still do the test. I'm a chartered accountant in 3 countries. I'm showing you I can pass the exams, but I don't want anything to do with that practice like it was presented to me. So unfortunately, I didn't meet cool people like you, unfortunately. But what I find is that if you as the SMP go out and attract very good people, putting your best foot forward and all of that, I think you'll go a long way. I believe so.
Yeah, I think the problem with this is some institutes in many countries, you cannot be a partner in a CPA firm if you are not a CPA because of this attest work and stuff like that. This is really a limitation. Now, it is now open. They are trying to open to 20% and so on, but I'm not sure a very, very, top advisor will want to be 20% only and so on. There is a problem there,
No, by all means, they should go to school, by all means.
Exactly. So they go to school.
And I think what you're showing is the great strength of our profession, how many different markets we can go into. Inga and then Kamlesh.
We have to work, due to the globalization, we have to work very flexible and very quick. And that is why an SMP is very important because the way to the partners is very easy. And those partners have the right expertise and the right technical expertise to help the clients. So my opinion is that going internationally for the SMEs within SMP is an advantage because of that flexibility and that quick work.
Yeah. And Kamlesh, you wanted to come in on this?
I would just like to add to what Daniel said. I completely agree with him that people are the most important assets of an SMP. It's extremely important that you hire the right kind of people, number one. Number two, train them. And number three, retain them. That's extremely important for rendering services on a long-term basis. Apart from what he has said, I would add one more thing. What I have noticed in small and medium practices that give ownership to the people who are joining, number one. Number two, what I have seen is that people get old, but they still see as if they can render service. No, certainly not. You have to hire young people, and you have to nurture them so that they grow within the organization. These are 2 extremely important things which one must develop in a SMP practice.
Well, believe it or not, we've just about run out of time. We have a clock in front of us that is counting down and is now beginning to flash 1 minute, 40 seconds. So I promised we would finish dead on 5:30, so I'm determined to do that. So this is kind of hard to summarize, but I think in really what we've learned today is just a very important role of the SMP in adding value to SMEs. And we talked about internationalization And of course, this is a win-win scenario. It's a win-win for the SME and for the SMP that we're helping, that we are. And I think we have a major role to play in helping the internationalization and globalization of SMEs. Well, would you join me please in thanking our excellent panel? I've learned so much. Thank you all very, very much. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings the end of this session. And let me all wish you a wonderful evening. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.